Herin Hentry, Procurement to Production, making ASEN 301549 work for you. Camp. Gold sponsors, ANZ, Intopia and Telstra. Silver sponsors, Canva and Coles. Supporters, Rumour, the design recruiter.
As a child, I would walk into the corner store with a list in my hand and take it to the grocer. He would pack the things for me. When years progressed, things moved to shelves. I would still walk into the stores where I would grab the things, browse and choose, put it into my basket, and there would be someone at the counter to help me or take the payment. Years later, things moved behind the shelves or behind the glasses and wires. So sounds familiar, right? We've all been in this digital transformation. So if you think about the digital transformation that has happened from our childhood to now, we literally see this happening. The transformation is enabling for some, but at the same time, it has created barriers for others as well. That's where the standard ASEN 301549 comes. It's a long standard to say the name ASEN 301549, so I'm going to use the ICT accessibility standards every now and then, so that makes your life and my life easier, I guess. We see from ticket counters to self-service kiosks, bank tellers to ATMs, the transformation has happened. A couple of years ago, I surveyed my network to find out what is the awareness level amongst these people who are working in the accessibility field between WCAG and ASEN 301. The results were a little bit mind-blowing. About 60% of people knew what is WCAG. Only 4% knew about this ICT accessibility standard. What does this gap in awareness let us know now? There is a strong, stark difference between what this standard asks and what we are doing. Most of our focus is still web-based and web-oriented that we access on browsers, but the standard actually asks us to do more than web, about ICT that includes mobile devices, software, kiosks, including documentation and support services. Coming from an IT background and having moved through multiple roles in testing, education, finance, telecommunication, research, and now I lead an organizational change in accessibility. I've been exploring the same question: why the standards are failing. It's been almost a decade since we set this standard, ASEN 301549. It actually was introduced to Australia in 2016. 2025 now, there is a big gap in this awareness. A bit of background about me: I love frameworks. I've been looking into the possibilities with many other organizations as well. I'm a member of International Accessibility Association and a certified professional in web accessibility. And I have mentored and judged top performing teams in global accessibility hackathons that is conducted by Nobility as well. Multiple times winner. And I was nominated as Australian Disability Network's Changemaker of the Year last year. And this year I've been honored with Australian Access Awards Hall of Fame for 2025 as well. So I've looked into the frameworks and I've seen these changes happening as well. So today, I'm going to tell you why this system actually, these standards fail. So the agenda for today is, we start with identifying the scope, and then we are going to understand about the user needs, and then we talk a little bit about skills development. Keep your eyes open. This is going to be an encouraging one for you. and into the procurement process, which is actually the topic, but I'm not going to touch the procurement process much, and then into risk process as well. There is no secret to success, but there is a systems to success. So why the accessibility standard fails is because we haven't integrated into our systems yet in many organizations. If we integrate this successfully, there is a high chance of this system, this standard, meeting its remit. Let's look at the system in detail and how I approach this. So the first thing is, I copied what is happening in the privacy area. So in privacy, in government organization, you would know they do it as a two-pronged approach. They do a privacy threshold assessment to start with, and then a privacy impact assessment. When is this done? It's done at the very early stages of your project, or a service, or even procuring a product. So that helps you to know what is the cost involved, how many resources you're going to need, what's the scope, as well as what's the time involved. Shifting left to accessibility, we've been actually talking about start from design, but this shift is shifting even further back. So start with accessibility threshold assessment to understand whether accessibility is in scope for this project or not. Doesn't matter. Even if you are changing a sunroof, let it come through you, and you tell them if accessibility is necessary or not. If accessibility is necessary, at some point in time towards the end of the project or the middle of the project has to do an impact assessment. So we'll come to that later. So what does the standard ask us to do? This is where you can identify the scope, whether it is required or not. Web-based products, non-web-based products, as well as the hybrid products needs accessibility. Also, softwares and hardwares and services as well. So this is what is stated in clause 1 of the ICT accessibility standard. The second one is what our user needs. The standard calls this as functional performance standards. So the user needs depend on the product that you are using. I copied the framework here from something in government organizations you might actually know, Protective Security Policy Framework. What does Protective Security Policy Framework ask you to do? Protect your users, keep them safe, keep your information safe, and also keep your technology safe from hackers. Same thing, when you look at the ICT standard, which is the ICT accessibility standard, the clauses can be categorized into 4 categories here. The first category is generic requirements and documentation and support services. These are the very key requirements. These are the mandatory requirements. Whether it is a closed functionality, whether you are giving a contained software or a hardware and people cannot install an assistive technology, it is called a closed functionality. So most of the closed functionality, it's very important to have accessibility as a mandatory requirement, and documentation and support services as well. The second set of requirements is communication requirements. Anything that is to do with two-way voice communication, video capabilities, relay or emergency service access, these all comes under the communications requirement. And the third one is facilities requirement. Anything that you're placing on your physical premises, whether it is a printer or a hardware like a fax or even your telephone that you're putting on your desk, maybe a checkout at your cafe, everything that needs to be, the facilities that need to be across this. And the fourth one is digital content and software requirements, which is what WCAG talks about, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So it applies to web, non-web documents, as well as software as well. Now you understand. When WCAG started, Sarah talked about it a little earlier, like 10 years ago, people didn't really know what is designer's role, what is developer's role, and what is tester's role. So the ICT accessibility standard is at its infancy. People don't really understand who needs to look after these things. This categorization gives you a good start. If you are an audio-visual team, you need to be understanding of communication requirements. If you are a facilities person or a workplace department, you need to be aware of the hardware requirement that goes onto your premises. And if you are a content software or a web browser-related team, then you need to be aware of the digital content and accessibility. Often I'm actually asked about as well, why do we need a standard? Can't we ask our users? Always start with the users, but what the standard actually helps us is, sometimes we go back to the same users again and again. When you go back to the same set of users repeatedly, it creates stereotypes. In her talk, Ms. Adichie says, the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but they are incomplete. Same users, they're getting the same kind of experiences, they're going to give you the same feedback. So instead, combine lived experience and technical expertise, and they must inform each other. That is why the standards are important here. So how do I bring my implementation team into the journey? That's the third step. I've identified the scope, whether it is the web or non-web, or hardware or software. And also I have now identified which area or subject matter expertise I should be consulting with. But how do I bring the implementation team across the journey? Make it a little bit curious. I want to give you a little riddle here that you can take with. I don't want to miss any words. I'm going to read it out. So when I go into a team meeting, we start speaking the languages in terms of a riddle. So this is one riddle which creates curiosity to people. See without sight, tiny but bright, shades meet light. Hear without sound, feel what's around. Speak without voice, still make a choice. Grip without strain, adapt through pain. Reach not far, still touch a star. Flash brings fear, safe space is near. Learn in a way that's not everyone's way. I'll let you take that riddle in for a second. Few of you are already starting to see a little bit of correlation in your heads, right? See without sight. A beginner would always ask me, what does that mean? How can someone see without sight? That's the right point when I introduce about assistive technologies like screen reader. And tiny but bright, what does that mean? Introducing techniques like zoom text or magnifier. So every area of this has got its own little nugget in there, which actually helps us to introduce accessibility, not as a big 1.1.1 WCAG criteria, but in a slightly different curiosity-invoking kind of tone. And then it actually goes through the projects after that as well. So people kind of ask, like, if we are building a kiosk, people would ask, like, can I reach that far? Which means, is that button far, like, at the reachable height for me to press it and add to the cart? So it's kind of, it creates that curiosity as well. It comes into your project language and easy to understand. It becomes a code as well. You can create your own versions with Copilot. This one I actually authored with AI as well. So what this kind of thing creates is, I'm not telling them what it is, but I'm creating a curiosity. The reason why I don't tell is because the ICT accessibility standard doesn't have understanding document as well as techniques for implementation yet. If you go into WCAG has its own understanding document and techniques for implementation, but ICT standard doesn't have it yet. So everyone's interpretation is different. So I don't want to influence another person's interpretation. So this creates a curiosity and a room for conversation between us. Thank you. So the next question that I have to ask is, now I have got this implementation team across the journey and I've given them a language and the curiosity to learn about it. Now I'm actually asking, how is this product or the service being delivered? Are you making it internally? Are you commissioning it externally? Or is it going through a procurement? So depending on what path it actually takes, you could cater it completely differently. So if it is going through procurement, add your mandatory requirements in your tender documents. What that actually means is, if you have looked at the current Australian Human Rights Commission's guidelines on digital accessibility, they do have a mandatory requirement as the solution must meet the standard. That's what they say. I've slightly tweaked it because we're not really talking about perfection here, we're talking about progress. So it's not lowering the bar. What we're saying is the solution meets or is close to meeting the standard. And the second part is when you put everything into a basket, you don't really know what is happening. So take the important things out of that standard and keep it there. So one of the ASEAN 301's requirement is, the solution must include a detailed list and explanation of accessibility and compatibility features available in the product. This comes as a clause 12, which is an unconditional clause, which means it is mandatory whether you are meeting other requirements or not. So I put that as a separate one, so I know where the documents or the vendor sits. And the other one is the solution support services must support individuals with disability, either directly or through referral point. This is about support services as well. So rather than putting everything as like a solution should meet this standard, splitting this into a little bit of multiple levels, it actually gives me a bit more visibility about what should I make mandatory and what can I make it highly desirable or have a little bit of leeway on. So once you have extracted these non-negotiable requirements from the standard, then you can actually inform the vendor about how are you going to validate that as well. As I mentioned earlier, this particular standard, ICT accessibility standard, doesn't have an understanding document. Everyone's interpretation is going to be different. So if you have a special way of interpreting or testing, let them know. This is how I'm going to test it. It may apply for WCAG as well. I'm going to test it on high contrast mode. I'm going to test it on low resolution mode. I'm going to test it on inverted color or using this automated tool. Getting that expectation earlier helps us for success. Meet the supplier where they are. Some suppliers have a little bit of denial. They don't really want to be involved in it. Find their motivation and meet them where they are. I've worked with suppliers who have won awards. I've also worked with suppliers who didn't really want to enter into the accessibility field at all. Meet them, have the conversation directly with them, and encourage them to include accessibility slowly. Sometimes it is about only that 4 non-interference criteria. If you know about the non-interference criteria, go back to WCAG and look at it. There are 4 non-interference criteria that we need to meet. Starting with that, or even like looking at keyboard accessibility or focus is actually a good start as well. Progress is better than perfection. When you meet with a supplier, if they don't have a VPAT, tell them, I'm going to come back to you in 18 months and ask for the VPAT, get it ready, please. This you can include as part of your vendor control assessment. This is another framework that I'm stealing from security. Security has actually got a process called VCA, Vendor Control Assessment. Include that into your process so it actually becomes a bit more of a two-pronged approach from either way. Also use the defect clauses in the legal contracts. Legal contracts already has defect clauses in there. If you're finding any pressing issues that need to be resolved, take a screenshot of it. As per the contracts, this is what you have actually committed to do. Please, can you fix this issue based on DDA 1992? Call it out, call out the legislation, and they're going to respond straight away. And then the next one is ask for a generic email rather than a single contact person. Even when you're looking at your accessibility conformance reports, ACRs, check, is it still going to one person or is there a generic email address? Progress over perfection again. So review the release notes and check ACRs as part of the health checks. Do I get 2 more minutes? Thank you. And another process that you need to actually look at it, review your user feedback before your license renewals. Don't leave it to the end. Look at it in a 3-month mark. Has this particular software or application received any critical user feedbacks? And put it back to them and put that into your license renewals process as well. So now I'm actually going to talk a little bit about the risk management process. Most organizations understand about risk. Risk by itself is a paper tiger. It doesn't have a teeth on its own. Use the risk wisely. How do you use the risk wisely? Whether it is a direct or indirect discrimination, whether it is intentional or unintentional, if a person with a disability is affected or if their productivity is impacted, it is a risk. It is a serious risk. Risks, when you mention about risk is something negative that may happen. It hasn't happened yet, but it may happen. But as soon as you start seeing repetitive issues coming, they are no longer risks, they are incidents. Know the difference between what a defect is and what an incident is. Once you know your e-learning modules are repeatedly coming without the the captions on, it is no longer a defect. It is an incident. Incidents are risks that have already happened. Create actions to drive the process of change. They are called controls. Think of controls like a dam. So when you have a dam full of water, you don't want to gush out the water in one go, right? You want to have multiple stage gates. So think of controls like a dam. Put things in place inside the processes itself from the beginning to the end. So you're capturing all that free-flowing or things that are falling off the radar throughout as well. When the minor issues are repeated, then make major process changes so that they don't happen again. So one thing I want you to take out of this presentation is there is no secret to success, but there is a system for success. Accessibility is not a checkbox. It requires a systemic change to make it successful. Review one process in your organization at a time and make changes. Thank you.
AliCamp, celebrating 10 years.